right now, I mean, the West is frantically signing all these pledges to triple global nuclear power by 2050, right?
Yeah, the political will is definitely there on paper, for sure.
Exactly, on paper. But while leaders are, busy drafting white papers and shaking hands over in Paris, there is one country that's actually out there pouring the concrete.
Right, they're pouring concrete and quietly securing these 60-year geopolitical marriages all over the globe.
It's fascinating. So today we're opening up a stack of really deeply fascinating sources for this deep dive. We've got a comprehensive 2026 global nuclear footprint report. We have some geopolitical analysis from the CSIS nuclear network and some recent updates from the World Nuclear Association.
Well, really solid sources, yeah.
Yeah. And our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how China spent 3 decades quietly building the ultimate industrial capability, which is, exporting nuclear power at scale.
Right, now they're basically cashing in on that right now.
Exactly, because they are leveraging the Belt and Road Initiative to construct what analysts are calling a nuclear Silk Road, while the West is, well, frankly, scrambling for an answer.
Yeah, and the timing of this data is just critical.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at the context of March 2026, China was indeed in Paris. They joined 37 other countries in that exact pledge to triple capacity.
Right.
But the divergence between the signatories there is vast. I mean, pledges require political will, but actually building nuclear reactors requires industrial supply chains.
Supply chains that have to be maintained. Right?
Exactly. Continuously fed and refined. And China has been doing exactly that. They've been focusing on this continuous manufacturing, while Western capabilities have, they've largely stalled out.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the global nuclear market right now, it looks a bit like a high-stakes infrastructure draft.
That's a good way to put it.
Right, because for decades, the U.S. and Europe, they were the undisputed top picks. If a developing nation wanted a reactor, they called the West. But now, Western vendors are largely watching from the sidelines.
Yeah, well, China is actively running the board.
Right. But to understand how China is selling these, multi-billion-dollar reactors globally, we really need to understand how they prove the technology actually works to a skeptical buyer in the first place.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the sources keep pointing to Pakistan as sort of the anchor of their entire export operation, which is interesting. How did a country with such a complex geopolitical status become the proving ground for this?
Well, Pakistan essentially served as a constrained market laboratory for them.
A laboratory.
Yeah, because due to its weapons program, Pakistan has historically been excluded from the broader international nuclear market.
Right, they couldn't just go shopping anywhere.
Exactly. They had very few options for civilian nuclear power.
Right.
And China recognized that constraint, not as a barrier, but really as an opportunity to master the immensely complex process of exporting nuclear tech.
Because it's not just dropping off a reactor.
Right. Not at all. They didn't just build a single plant and leave. They used that relationship over decades to learn how to manage overseas supply chains, how to adapt their engineering to local workforces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and how to navigate international regulations.
So what does that physical footprint actually look like today, like right now?
It's substantial. I mean, China currently has 6 operating reactors in Pakistan.
6. Wow.
Yeah, 6. And the crown jewels of this operation are 2 massive Kwalong 1 units. You might see them referred to by their technical designation, the HPR 1000.
Right, I saw that in the reports.
Yeah. And these are positioned right on the Karachi coast, and they've been feeding power steadily to the national grid since 2021 and 2022.
So they're fully operational.
Fully operational.
Yeah.
And the momentum is continuing, too. Just recently, in December 2024, they poured the first concrete for a 7th reactor, Chashma 5.
Okay, so they're not slowing down.
No. And crucially, for the international market, all of these civilian facilities operate strictly under International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, safeguards.
See, that IAEA safeguard detail, that seems like the linchpin to me.
Oh, absolutely. It's massive.
Right. Because if I put myself in the shoes of an energy minister in a developing nation, proposing a nuclear plant is a huge political and financial risk.
Massive risk, yeah.
The very first question I'd ask a foreign vendor is, can your technology run safely on a foreign grid without triggering an international security crisis?
Exactly. And China can essentially just point to Karachi and let the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, it's like...
They offer a physical, functioning proof of concept. Whereas Western vendors, on the other hand, are currently really struggling to point to a similarly successful recently completed export project.
Right, one that didn't suffer from wild budget overruns or like years-long delays. It's
Like,
like buying a house. It's entirely different from looking at an architect's blueprint, which seems to be what a lot of Western vendors are basically selling right now.
that's a perfect analogy, yeah.
Right. China is letting international buyers walk through a fully furnished, functioning model home. You can walk in, flip the light switches, see that the grid is stable.
Exactly.
But I have to ask, what about the transition from that constrained market to the open market? Because, like you said, Pakistan didn't have choices.
Right.
Does this success actually translate to countries in the global south that do have choices, countries that have multiple vendors courting them?
It translates remarkably well, actually, because the lessons they learned in Pakistan allowed China to perfect a replicable system.
Okay.
So now they're taking that perfected blueprint to the open market. And the technology functioning, well, that's merely the baseline requirement, right?
Sure.
The reason countries with choices are actively selecting Chinese reactors over Western alternatives, it really comes down to the economic engine behind the Belt and Road Initiative.
The financing.
Specifically the financing structure, yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting because the numbers in these reports regarding Western delays are just jarring.
They're staggering.
Let's look at the UK first. The Hinkley Point C project, which is being built by France's EDF, it's approaching nearly £48 billion for 2 units.
Right.
And it isn't even expected to deliver power before 2030.
Yeah.
And then over in the United States, the Vauxhall plant in Georgia hit roughly $35 billion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why are these Western projects hemorrhaging money in time like this?
Well, it largely comes down to a loss of industrial muscle memory.
Muscle memory.
Yeah, because the West essentially stopped building commercial nuclear plants for an entire generation.
Oh, right.
And when an industry experiences a 30-year pause, the ecosystem around it degrades.
Makes sense.
The specialized welders who knew how to work with nuclear-grade steel, they retired. And there were no apprentices there to replace them.
Wow, yeah.
The heavy foundries capable of forging massive reactor pressure vessels, they either pivoted to other industries or they just shut down completely.
So the whole supply chain just dried up.
Exactly. Even regulatory agencies lost their efficiency in approving new builds. So as a result, every new Western nuclear plant essentially becomes a bespoke, first-of-its-kind mega project.
Which guarantees delays.
Practically guarantees delays and massive cost overruns, yeah.
And while the West is trying to rebuild that ecosystem from scratch, the sources indicate China is building its domestic reactors for, roughly $2 to $3 billion each?
Yeah, a fraction of the cost, because they maintain their supply chain.
But for the export market, they aren't just selling the physical reactor. The reports refer to this as a nuclear-in-a-box model.
Yes.
What exactly is being bundled into this box?
The bundle is incredibly comprehensive. A client nation receives the reactor technology, the construction crews to build it, a guaranteed supply of nuclear fuel for the standard 60-year lifespan of the plant.
Wait, fuel for 60 years is included?
Included in the structure, yes. And perhaps most importantly, the bank loans to pay for it all are bundled in too. For example, for the new Chashma 5 plant in Pakistan, China's state banks provided 85% of the near $5 billion cost.
85%.
Yeah, and they offered an interest rate between 1% and 6%, spread out over 20 to 25 years.
Okay, let's break down those loan terms because that seems to be the ultimate structural advantage here.
Yes, it really is.
If I want to build a massive addition on my house using a Western model, it feels like I have to hire a separate architect, a separate construction crew, a separate supplier for materials.
Exactly.
And then I have to go beg a commercial bank for a loan to pay all of them. And any single point in that chain can delay the project or spike the cost.
Right. There's so much friction.
But China's Belt and Road model acts as a turnkey solution. A nation signs one agreement, and a single state-backed entity handles everything from pouring the foundation to financing the debt.
Exactly. And the CSIS analysis places really heavy emphasis on the nature of those loans, referring to them as concessional loans.
Concessional loans, right?
Yeah. Let's look at why the West struggles to match this. If a regular commercial bank evaluates a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project in an emerging market, they see immense risk.
Sure. Political instability, currency stuff.
Exactly. Potential political instability, currency fluctuations, construction delays. So to justify that risk, the commercial bank demands a very high interest rate.
Naturally.
However, a state-backed bank operating under the Belt and Road Initiative, they view the project through a geopolitical lens, not just a financial one.
Oh, so the profit isn't just the interest rate.
Precisely. They offer a loan at a fraction of the market rate because the return on investment includes securing a diplomatic anchor.
Wow.
And Western export credit agencies simply do not have the mandate or the Treasury backing to underwrite loans at those deeply subsidized rates.
So who is actually signing these comprehensive deals? Where does this economic model collide with real-world geopolitical strategy?
Well, the data from 2026 points heavily toward Kazakhstan as a major turning point.
Right, Kazakhstan.
Yeah, Kazakhstan is perhaps the most illustrative example of this shift. In June 2025, they awarded contracts for their very first nuclear power plants.
And they're huge players in uranium.
Massive.
Yeah.
They are a vital player in the global energy market. They produce roughly 39% of the world's global uranium output.
39%.
Yes. And they are also a close security partner of the United States.
Right.
Yet they awarded the contracts to Russia's Rosatom and China's CNNC. A second plant in the Zambul region is slated specifically for China.
The detail that really stands out to me in the CSIS report is that U.S. vendors didn't even submit a bid for the Kazakhstan project.
No, they didn't.
Washington wasn't even at the negotiating table. I mean, why would the U.S. completely sit out a bid in a country that produces nearly 40% of the world's uranium?
It circles back to that structural inability to offer that turnkey, state-backed package we just talked about. The Kazakh government wasn't looking to hire a fragmented collection of private engineering firms and commercial banks. They wanted a unified, full-service package that minimized their own risk.
They wanted the box.
They wanted the nuclear in a box. And Western vendors, who are operating as private entities accountable to shareholders, they just couldn't assemble a package that competed with the state-subsidized, comprehensive offers from Beijing and Moscow.
The CSIS nuclear network summarized the impact of this brilliantly, I thought. They noted that infrastructure decisions made in peacetime shape the choices leaders face when pressure mounts.
That's a great quote.
Isn't it? Because by signing these agreements, a nation like Kazakhstan isn't just buying electricity. They are effectively locking themselves into Chinese and Russian supply chains, maintenance schedules, and debt obligations for the next half-century.
Exactly.
It's this slow, quiet reorientation of global influence, literally cemented in the foundation of their energy grid.
And that 60-year lock-in is a foundational concept here. You cannot pivot away from a nuclear supplier easily. If you rely on a foreign state for your proprietary reactor parts, specialized engineering support, and nuclear fuel, your foreign policy decisions are inherently influenced by that relationship.
But this expansion isn't completely unchecked, right? Because in the West, national security concerns have effectively built a regulatory wall.
They have, yes.
The situation in the UK is a perfect case study for this. China's state-owned energy corporation, CGN, holds a 33.5% financial stake in the Hinkley Point C project.
Right.
But the UK government restricted them to being a silent partner. They supplied capital, but they have no operational control whatsoever.
Which highlights the dual nature of nuclear energy perfectly. I mean, It is civilian infrastructure, but it is intrinsically tied to national security.
Right.
And that dynamic became even clearer when China attempted to build its own plant in the UK, the Bradwell B project, using their HPR 1000 design.
The same one from Pakistan.
Exactly. And the technology itself actually passed the UK's rigorous safety tests.
It did.
It did. The engineering was totally sound. However, the UK government invoked their National Security and Investment Act of 2021 to effectively kill the project.
Wow. Even though the tech was good.
Yeah, because they determined that allowing a foreign state-owned entity to hold majority ownership and operational control of critical power infrastructure, that was just an unacceptable security risk, completely independent of the technology's viability.
So the West has walled off its own grids. But looking outside the West, at the global South, across Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, the pipeline seems remarkably messy.
Very messy.
The reports show a landscape just cluttered with memorandums of understanding and framework agreements, but surprisingly few finalized contracts.
Right.
Like Ghana is currently stuck in a drawn-out tender battle between the U.S. vendor NuScale and China's CNNC.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia is considering China for a massive bid in Cordowian, but nothing is signed. Brazil is only in the dialogue stage for their Angra 4 project. So, if China's nuclear-in-a-box pitch is so economically dominant and Western vendors can't match the financing, why are these regions still bogged down in tender battles? Why hasn't China simply swept the board?
Well, the hesitation stems directly from that 60-year lock-in effect we just discussed.
Ah, they're wary.
Very wary. Developing nations are acutely aware of the geopolitical weight of these decisions. They are hesitant to become entirely reliant on a single superpower for their foundational energy needs, especially in an increasingly polarized global environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Precisely. Consequently, these nations are engaging in a complex geopolitical dance. They are deliberately hedging their bets, playing vendors off one another to negotiate better loan terms or more favorable technology transfers.
Smart.
And they're meticulously negotiating safeguard agreements. But perhaps the most significant reason for the delay is that many of these nations are simply waiting.
Waiting for what? Like to see if the West can rebuild its supply chains.
Partially, yeah, but mostly they are waiting for the next generation of technology to mature.
Okay.
Which brings us to the true technological frontier of the nuclear market. Small modular reactors, or SMR.
Right, SMRs.
This is the arena where China is actively maneuvering to pull decisively ahead. Until now, we have been discussing massive traditional reactors like the HPR-1000, which output over 1,000 megawatts and require massive capital and vast grid infrastructure.
Yeah.
But the potential game changer highlighted in the sources is the ACP-100, also known as the Linglong one.
Let's unpack the mechanics of this shift, because the difference between a traditional reactor and an SMR isn't just about size, right?
Not at all.
Building a traditional nuclear plant is essentially like building a custom cathedral on site. Every single piece is bespoke.
Right.
You need thousands of workers on location for years, and if there's bad weather, a supply chain hiccup, or a labor shortage, the entire timeline gets pushed back, driving costs up exponentially.
Exactly. The cathedral analogy is spot on.
But an SMR, from my understanding, operates on a completely different model. It's more like building a Lego set in a factory.
Yes.
You mass produce identical reactor modules indoors in a highly controlled environment. You ship those completed modules on a standard flatbed truck or cargo ship, and then simply click them together on site.
That transition from bespoke construction to standardized manufacturing is the core innovation of SMRs. And the ACP-100 is a 125-megawatt reactor designed exactly on this principle.
Okay.
And the timeline in the 2026 data is critical here. As of early this year, the ACP-100 is in the final commissioning phase in China, with full commercial operation expected in the first half of the year.
So it's happening right now.
Right now. If they successfully hit that target, China will have deployed the world's first land-based commercial SMR.
And the contrast with Western efforts is really stark. I mean, the scale. A U.S.-based company that was widely considered the great Western hope for SMRs, they had to cancel their flagship project in Idaho back in 2023 after projected costs doubled.
Yeah, that was a huge blow.
So the West is still largely at the blueprint stage, while China's moving toward the assembly line. But why is the Global South so specifically interested in these smaller modular units?
Well, the versatility of SMRs solves multiple infrastructure problems simultaneously for developing economies.
How so?
While a massive traditional reactor requires a highly stable, extensive national grid to absorb all that power,
Right.
which many emerging economies simply do not possess. But SMRs can be deployed to localized grids. For example, the data shows Indonesia is targeting SMR deployment by 2032 or 2034.
Okay.
And their primary goal isn't just general grid power. They want to power localized industrial smelting parks.
Oh, I see.
They need dedicated, reliable energy for heavy mineral processing away from major population centers.
And I saw that Saudi Arabia is looking at the ACP-100 for zero-carbon desalination plants on the Red Sea.
Exactly.
They can utilize the high-temperature heat generated by the reactor to literally boil and desalinate seawater rather than just using it to spin a turbine for electricity.
And that industrial heat generation is a massive selling point. Developing economies desperately need to process raw minerals, smelt metals, and secure fresh water.
Yeah.
Doing so with fossil fuels spikes their carbon emissions and ties them to volatile global oil and gas markets. So SMRs offer a pathway to heavy industrialization without the carbon footprint.
That's huge.
If China successfully commercializes the ACP-100 this year, they secure a monumental first-mover advantage. When a country like Nigeria, which has recently pivoted its energy strategy toward SMRs, issues a request for proposals and asks, who actually has a working commercial model to show us?
China will be the only vendor in the room able to point to an operating unit.
Exactly.
It's the Pakistan model all over again.
It really is.
They prove it works at home, package it with state-backed financing, and offer a turnkey solution to the Global South.
The underlying strategy remains identical. They are simply applying it to newer, more adaptable technology that fits the exact needs of emerging industrial economies.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? I mean, you might not work in international energy policy or the nuclear sector.
Right.
You might simply be paying your monthly utility bill. But this dynamic deeply affects the global economy you participate in every day.
Absolutely.
The supply chains being engineered right now, the infrastructure being literally cemented into the ground today across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. These physical assets are going to dictate global trade patterns, international climate goals, and geopolitical power dynamics until the year 2085.
Easily.
The nuclear Silk Road isn't just about who builds the cheapest power plant. It's fundamentally about who owns, operates, and finances the critical infrastructure of the 21st and 22nd centuries.
And, looking at the broader implications, there is a lingering, really uncharted vulnerability embedded in this entire Belt and Road nuclear model.
What do you mean?
Well, we continually refer to this as a 60-year marriage, right? Encompassing the initial construction, the ongoing supply of proprietary fuel, the specialized replacement parts, and the massive state-backed debt.
Right, a long-term commitment.
But international relationships are volatile. Marriages can sour.
That's a very real variable. Regimes change, economies crash, alliances shift.
Exactly. So consider the scenario 30 or 40 years from now. What happens if a developing nation, burdened by unforeseen economic crises, completely defaults on its state-backed Chinese nuclear loan?
Oh, wow.
Or what if global geopolitical alliances suddenly flip and a host nation decides it absolutely no longer wants foreign state-owned engineers possessing intimate access to its critical power grid?
That's a terrifying thought.
Because with a traditional Belt and Road project, like a deepwater port or a toll highway, the creditor's nation can attempt to seize the asset, or the host nation can simply nationalize it and take over operations.
Right.
Nuclear infrastructure defies those traditional resolutions. You cannot simply unplug a nuclear reactor.
No.
You certainly cannot repossess it and ship it back to the vendor. The political, financial, and severe security implications of a defaulted or heavily contested nuclear asset in the year 2060 represent entirely uncharted territory for global diplomacy.
Yeah, I mean, you can repossess a cargo ship or take over a toll road, but you cannot repossess a glowing core of uranium.
No, you can't.
It just sits there, an immovable anchor binding two nations together, for better or for worse, regardless of the political weather above it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the infrastructure that powers your world. Look past the blueprints to see who is actually pouring the concrete, and we will catch you next time.